Hi, is this working? Yep, good. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the inaugural meeting of the Charter Revision Commission. My name is Richard Beery, and I have the honor of serving as the chair. This is my first time serving on a commission like this, but I am a lifelong New York resident. Grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, and have spent my career working on issues related to equal opportunity for New York families. I had the honor of serving as deputy mayor under Mayor Bill de Blasio, where I worked on a number of initiatives, including pre-K for all, and currently serve as CEO of the Robin Hood Foundation, which is a foundation here in New York focused on fighting poverty and elevating New Yorkers out of poverty into opportunity. So I want to start by thanking Mayor Adams for giving me this opportunity to serve on this commission. Certainly the timing could not be better. Our city faces significant challenges, but of course, overcoming challenges is part of our city's DNA. So what makes New York City great? And so despite these challenges, I am bullish on the city. I will never underestimate the resolve of New Yorkers or our capacity to accomplish great things when we do them together. And that's what we're here to do. As New York City celebrates its 400th anniversary, it's a fitting moment to take a fresh look at our city's governing charter and ask ourselves what's working, what's not working. How can we ensure that city government is delivering the results that New Yorkers expect? And how can we ensure that New York City remains a cradle of opportunity, as it was for my parents when they immigrated to New York from Panama about 60 years ago? How can we revise the charter to make it a more effective tool for building the more inclusive and affordable city that New Yorkers deserve? This is a city of multitudes. We have old New Yorkers and young New Yorkers of every race, and from just about every country. We have recent immigrants and people whose families go back to the city for generations. We are gay, we're straight, cisgender, and transgender, and non-binary. We have literally every political persuasion. We're about 8 million people with 80 million opinions. And that diversity can make it hard to do work like this. But it's also diversity that makes the city so strong. And so it's ultimately our responsibility as we review the entire charter and suggest changes. And of course, all changes that we recommend have to be agreed to by the voters to have any effect. But we know as we do this work, it's our job to really make sure that we're listening to the diversity of opinions. I know I speak for my commissioners when I say that we will approach this work with the utmost transparency and openness. We're committed to hearing from a broad spectrum of New Yorkers and to pursuing the best ideas we can find. I also want to note that although we were appointed by the mayor, this is an independent commission. I know that everyone on this commission is committed to approaching the work with integrity, and that in making our recommendations to the city's voters, we are bound only by our judgment and our values. We're going to pursue ideas regardless of who proposed them and regardless of who supports them. So joining me in this task are 12 other commissioners, my Vice Chair, Sharon Greenberger, Secretary Leila Borzarg, Reverend A.R. Bernard, who cannot be with us right now, Grace Bonilla, Shams DeBaron, Anita Lermont, Dr. Lizette Nieves, Julie Samuels, Diane Savino, Carl Weisbrod, who I think is also not here, Valerie White, and Catherine Wild. As I said, we'll be considering the entire charter. The mayor has asked that the commission look in particular at the charter's approach to housing and planning. And I can't imagine a more urgent challenge for this body to take up. Our city is in the midst of a profound affordability crisis. For millions of low-income New Yorkers and middle-class New Yorkers, housing costs are the central struggle of their lives. For millions more, especially low-income New Yorkers, our housing crisis severely limits where New Yorkers can live, what schools they can attend, how they can get to work, and whether their families can stay together. It is not hyperbolic to say that the future of housing is the future of New York City. Recently, as a city, we've made significant strides thanks to the work of so many, including the mayor and members of his administration, as well as the city council and tireless advocates, countless of tireless advocates. The city has recently enacted the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, the most pro-housing reform in many decades. But we all acknowledge that there is far more work to be done. The commission will, among other things, see how we can build on that momentum to create a more affordable city. And as I said, at the end of the day, it will be up to the voters to decide whether to alter the city charter. But long before the ballots are printed, our process will be driven by New Yorkers. Over the coming month, we will listen to New Yorkers at hearings across the 5 boroughs. There will be opportunities to testify in person as well as virtually, and opportunities to submit written testimony. In addition to hearing from the general public, we will invite experts to testify on particular topics, hear the views of elected officials and community stakeholders, and solicit the views of city agencies and their staff. Each of the commission hearings will be public, live streamed, and recorded. We have already established the dates and times for the first 2 of these hearings. They are Tuesday, February 11th, 2024, from 5 to 8 p.m. in the borough of Brooklyn, at the Fire Department Headquarters, Robert O. Lowry Auditorium, 9 Metro Tech Center, entering via the courtyard off Flatbush Avenue. And in Queens on Monday, February 24th, from 5 to 8 p.m. at the New York City Department of Design and Construction, 3030 Thompson Avenue, entrance on 30th Place, is why I love Queens, only in 30 Thompson Avenue, enter on 30th Place in Queens. We will hold 3 more meetings in March and April in the Bronx, Staten Island, and Manhattan. We will share those details as we have them. The proceedings for each of these hearings will be live streamed and as I said, archived online in our website, www.nyc.gov/charter. That's www.nyc.gov/charter. And New Yorkers already have the opportunity to submit written testimony. You can email the testimony to the commission at chartertestimony@citycharter.nyc.gov. That is chartertestimony@citycharter.nyc.gov. Before we proceed further, I would like to ask that we consider 3 resolutions that, if adopted, will assist the commission in its work. The first was to appoint Alex Schierenbeck. Alex, am I pronouncing your last name correctly? All right, it's a miracle. Schierenbeck, sorry. Too generous to correct me. Alex Schierenbeck, the commission's first executive director. The commission's executive director and only executive director. Alec currently serves as the general counsel to First Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer, and was her general counsel when she served as deputy mayor for Housing, Economic Development, and Workforce. In these roles, he helped guide the administration's City of Yes initiatives to promote housing opportunity, carbon neutrality, and economic growth. This resolution will grant Alec the authority to maintain the staff and work with other city agencies and elected officials to accomplish the commission's goals. The second resolution establishes an order of succession to the chair and designates Vice Chair Sharon Greenberger to act in my place if I'm unable to execute the duties of the office of chair or continue to mispronounce Alec's name. And the third resolution is required by New York State's open meetings law and will allow commissioners to attend open meetings by video conference if they are unable to attend the meetings in person. We'll consider these resolutions all together, and I move that the commission adopt resolutions 1, 2, and 3 as presented today.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, the motion is to adopt resolutions 1, 2, and 3 as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The resolutions have passed.
All right, I fear that was the easy part, but before we proceed further, I'd like to invite all of the commissioners to introduce themselves and make brief remarks, beginning with our Vice Chair, Sharon Greenberger. Sharon is the President and CEO of the YMCA of Greater New York. Prior to joining the YMCA, Sharon spent more than 20 years in the private and public sectors, working to improve New Yorkers' health and livelihoods and to promote the development of New York City. Sharon.
Well, thank you. You've just given me my relevant background. I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm honored to be part of this group and equally committed to ensuring that we invest in understanding and bringing others' perspectives and insights in from all communities. As you noted, I'm the president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater New York. We have 24 branches throughout the city, so we understand what New Yorkers are facing. And I hope to really reflect that in the conversations that we have here, One other note I will just say in terms of relevant experience that I hope to be able to leverage here is in the past, I ran the School Construction Authority and was the Chief Operating Officer at the DOE. So again, have that broad perspective on community needs and I think know a little something about construction and development and hope to parlay those into effective tools here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. Next, our Secretary, Layla Bozorg, is New York City's Executive Director of Housing. Her experience includes serving as a Commissioner of the New York City Planning Commission, as a Deputy Commissioner and Chief of Staff at HPD, the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, and in roles at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I'd like you to make some remarks.
Thank you, Richard. I just want to note that I'm really honored to serve on this commission alongside my other commissioners, especially as each of you has dedicated your lives and your careers to improving our city and improving the conditions for those that are often most impacted by our housing challenges and our affordability crisis. I know that everyone here is very familiar with the fact that our housing crisis and our affordability crisis really does threaten the very fabric of what makes us great as a city, that we've been home to people of all walks of life, of different races, ethnicities, family structures, identities, and importantly, a place where people of all incomes have been able to find a footing and a home to pursue their dreams. You know, in the housing world, we often talk about the housing challenges by framing how we as a city have often been the victim of our own success, that because we're a place that people want to live and stay, where job growth has outpaced housing growth, we find ourselves in this simple supply and demand problem. But I think that describing it solely as a simple supply and demand curve often overlooks the complicated origins of what drives our housing shortage, what sustains our housing shortage, and what exacerbates the inequities in our housing market. And it can even mask the types of nuanced solutions that we need to ensure we're building a range of housing types at a range of affordability levels and in a range of neighborhoods to meet the varied needs of our fellow New Yorkers. So I'm really encouraged that we're in a place where there's cross-sector agreement, cross-government agreement, cross-institutional agreement, that we have to interrogate every possible contributing factor to our housing and affordability challenges. That's very much the spirit of what underlied the city's Fair Housing Plan, Where We Live NYC. So I thank HPD for leading that. It's very much the spirit of the Speaker's Fair Housing Framework. So I really want to thank Speaker Adams for introducing that framework and her team for helping make it law. And it's very much the spirit of what was laid out in the examination and overhaul of our zoning resolution through the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity. And I want to thank both Mayor Adams and Speaker Adams for spearheading that, owning it, and helping get it across the finish line. And I want to thank DCP for their bold vision, including Chair Garodnick for getting it done. I'm really excited now that we get to examine, discuss, listen, learn from anyone who wants to lend their voice in this process about the ways in which the very structure of our government, its processes, its operations, as laid out in the charter, how it can be better harnessed to better address our housing crisis, our affordability crisis, and our fair housing obligations in the service of New Yorkers. So I really thank Mayor Adams for tasking us with this responsibility, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
Thank you so much. Next, although he was not here, I would love to introduce Reverend A.R. Bernard. Reverend Bernard is a longtime community leader who leads one of New York City's largest houses of worship, the Christian Culture Center, with over 37,000 members. His influential teachings, rooted in a traditional biblical perspective, offer guidance on world affairs, politics, pop culture, and family matters. I know that Reverend Bernard will be an important member of the commission. I'm looking forward to having his participation. Next, it's my honor to introduce Grace Bonilla. Grace is the president and CEO of the United Way of New York City, one of New York's most important private institutions supporting the public interest. She has previously served as the administrator of the New York City Human Resources Administration and as the executive director of the Task Force on Racial Equity and Inclusion. Grace.
Is that working? Great. Okay. Thank you, Rich, for that introduction. I think that when you look not just at my career, which is a through line of service to New Yorkers, especially the most vulnerable, you can also see that I was one of those fortunate people whose parents chose to come to New York City as a beacon of hope from Ecuador. And I was lucky enough to be born and raised in one of the best boroughs, the borough of Queens. And I am fortunate that I get to continue to raise my family in that borough. But I am also painfully aware of how expensive it is to continue to live in this city. So this serving on this commission is for me an opportunity to make sure that the generations that come after us, including my children, can continue to call this great city home. And like many of the commissioners here, my commitment to all New Yorkers is that I am committed to a transparent process that puts New Yorkers first. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. And of course, Brooklyn is of course the best borough. Next, pleasure to introduce Shams DeBaron, an advocate and a change maker committed to positive change for people experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. Having experienced homelessness as a child after being discharged from the foster care system at age 12, Shams has emerged as a powerful voice for his community and beyond. So glad you can join us, Shams.
I don't have much to say, no. So I think that it's unique that I'm sitting here today amongst all of you as someone who has, as you said, grew up in the foster care system, started experiencing homelessness at the age of 10 and was permanently discharged into the street without a safety net at the age of 12. A history of chronic homelessness, also raising my son in the family shelter system. And I have 6 children. We've all been through a lot in the city due to a lot of failed policies and other things. I think that this is a unique time in our history that we have someone who actually lived the issues in such a traumatic way that can sit here in this capacity to help to change those things that have negatively impacted not just myself, but tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers through the years. I think that one of the things that I have always sort of like tried to position was the value of having people with lived experience, having a seat at the table, a voice in the discussions, and a hand in the decision making. And here we have this opportunity with this commission, not just for us to articulate our thoughts and our views, but really to source through the diverse city of people, great people in our city, to really reflect what their desires is in this city. And I believe that we will collectively as a city do something that is great, that is historic. We've seen a little taste of that with the work that we've done collectively on the city of Yes. And the fact that we're focused on the real solution to homelessness, housing, should not be lost on anyone. And so I'm just honored, I'm humbled, I'm grateful, and I'm also ready to get to work.
All right. Thank you so much. Next, Alita Laramont is a partner at the law firm of Fried, Frank, Harris, Shriver, and Jacobson, where she practices in the areas of land use and real estate, expertise that will be particularly helpful given our focus. Prior to joining Fried Frank, she was the chair of the New York City Planning Commission and director of the New York City Department of City Planning, having previously served as its general counsel and executive director. Anita, please share some remarks.
Let me just say that I am so happy to be here based on the background that you talked about and many more years of experience in government service. It is clear to me that, we make efforts to address these issues and we continue to face challenges. People are of goodwill generally, I think, but the thing that I have found over time is that in this city, people think that we need more housing. We all agree on that, but the issue becomes, please not next to me. And that has been the challenge that we faced when I was at city planning, and that we really have to overcome the fact that we all need to accept that we need growth. We maybe don't need huge amounts everywhere, but a little bit everywhere would help. But for me, the issue is trying to change minds, because we have a system that really works in a very parochial way, because we have to ask on the neighborhood level about what people will agree to. And it frequently stymies our ability to solve big problems on a citywide basis. And we really need to do it. I think that Layla said it very well. For the continued vitality of the city and for its continued growth and greatness in the world, we need to be a city that can be a place for everyone who wants to be here. And that can't happen unless we can solve this housing problem that we have. So I'm really happy to work on this commission.
Thank you so much. Next, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Lizette Nieves. Lizette is the president of the Fund for the City of New York and a distinguished clinical professor at New York University. As a scholar, Dr. Nieves' research focuses on youth and the future of work. Prior to joining the fund, she was the founding executive director of Europe NYC and served in the Bloomberg administration as chief of staff of the New York City Department of Youth and Community Development. Former Rhodes Scholar, all around excellent leader. Lizette.
Thank you very much. And can I say Brooklynite, best borough? Just want to say that. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisette Nieves. I'm really proud to be here. And why I said yes to this challenge is because there is absolutely no question that this is the most significant policy change that has happened in decades in housing. There is no question. So I want to thank both our mayor and our city council for that. What we do with this is an important opportunity. And so I want to be part of doing that. Born and raised in New York, in Brooklyn, I want to say that. Public schools all the way through higher ed. I'm really proud of that. And came part of the first generation of Puerto Ricans in the 40s. And so many generations of Puerto Ricans who are here, I'm part of that. I'm really proud to be here in New York. The thing that I believe that I'm going to offer that may have been a major contribution is two things. One thing at the fund is that we have housed for the last 15 years, along with Grace Bonilla, is a true cost of living report, talking about housing for a long time. This is not something new. And then the other thing is the most recent asylum seekers report and evaluation on that. And I think that's important for us to understand both of those. I am here to listen. I'm here to support a transparent process. But I'm also here to understand that when we're talking about New Yorkers, we're talking about my sister, my brother, my cousin, my aunt, my uncle. They're all still here. And we don't want them to be pushed out. So with that said, thank you for the honor of sitting here. And we're lucky to have you as our chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lizette. Next, I'd like to introduce Julie Samuels. Julie is the president and CEO of Tech NYC, an organization representing New York's fast-growing entrepreneurial tech industry, which she founded in 2016. She previously served as executive director at Engine, a nationwide nonprofit focused on technology, entrepreneurship, and advocacy, where she remains a member of the board. Julie.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, everyone. I'm really honored to be here and part of this important work. I'm a chosen New Yorker. I came here out of choice, and I'm happy to be building my career and raising my young family here. And I think I would just echo what so many of my fellow commissioners said, that clearly the challenge of housing is a challenge that touches every part of our city and everyone who lives here. And I spend my days and my time thinking about how we ensure that New York City's economy continues to be at the forefront, continues to be part of a vibrant economy that is creating jobs for all of New Yorkers. But if people can't afford to live here, then that is impossible. So it is crucial for the future of this city, for the future of our workforce, for the future of so many, for Lizette's family and Grace, your family, and the people who grew up here, but also the people we want to attract here and the people we want to remain here, because New York City is the best city. It's the best city in the world. And it is incredibly important that we make sure that people have access to that. And I am just really excited to get to work on this really meaty problem. We are not only so lucky to be working against the backdrop of City of Yes, but there's a real moment, I would say, even beyond New York, across the country around housing policy. There's real energy behind tackling this messy problem. And I'm really excited to have that wind at our back as we dig in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Next, it's my honor to introduce Senator Diane Savino, who currently serves as Senior Advisor at City Hall, focusing on state and city legislative issues. Brings a very unique experience to this work, having previously served as Executive Director of the 2024 Charter Revision Commission. From 2005 to 2022, the Senator Diane Savino represented in the State Senate, North and East Shores of Staten Island and portions of Southern Brooklyn. I had the chance to work closely with her in her office when I served as a CEO of the Children's Aid Society. Senator Savino, I'd love to have you answer your remarks.
Thank you. It is an honor and a privilege to sit here with so many of you who have such a wealth of experience in policymaking to improve the lives and conditions of New Yorkers. As you pointed out, Richard, you and I did a lot of work when you were at Children's Aid and I was in the Senate, but I think about my own experience in life. Like Grace, I was born and raised in Queens. And I no longer say that's the best because they're all the best borough. New York City is an amazing place. But I wound up 23 and a half years ago having to move to Staten Island because opportunities for home ownership for a person like myself did not exist in Queens at that point. Shortly after that, never realizing I was going to run for Senate, I found myself representing the North and East Shores of Staten Island and Southern Brooklyn. And during the time I was in the Senate in Brooklyn, working with the local councilman and the then Mayor Bloomberg, we rezoned all of Coney Island to lead to massive development. Well, here we are in 2025, and some of those developments have still not started. It has taken almost 15 years for a rezoning to come to fruition. It just takes too long. That's one of the challenges that we face with how do we provide housing for New Yorkers at every level of our economy. It oftentimes just takes too long, and we're not producing the kind of housing that people need. Whether it's the policies that put in place 421A and how do we mix, high income and affordability. These are challenges that we need to take on. So I'm really excited about this, but I will just say, as the previous executive director of the Charter Revision Commission, I think you said it, Richard, we have 8 million New Yorkers. They have 80 million opinions. You're going to hear them. The people are going to come forward and they're going to put things on our table that we had not anticipated, because New Yorkers are really engaged in trying to improve their government. We saw it last year. Hundreds of people turned out for the Charter Revision Commission. And in fact, when the voters saw what was put before them, they overwhelmingly passed the questions. So New Yorkers want a better government, they want a better product, and they're going to want to participate. So I'm looking forward to this experience as a commissioner. It'll be a lot more fun than being the executive director. Sorry, Alec. But I think we're gonna come out with a product that makes New York a better place for all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. Next person I'm going to introduce is not here. He had a long-standing travel conflict, but Carl Weisbrod is Senior Advisor at HRNA Advisors. He's had a legendary and distinguished career guiding public agencies and leading initiatives focused on revitalizing and developing our city, our neighborhoods, and our communities. He was the founding president of the New York City Economic Development Corporation, chair of the New York City Planning Commission, and director of the New York City Planning Department, New York City Department of City Planning. And so I know we'll really benefit from Carl's expertise for sure. Next, Valerie White is Senior Executive Director of LISC New York, where she leads the expansion strategy to promote LISC NY's statewide efforts to create an economic and community development ecosystem that addresses deeply rooted systemic inequalities. She has more than 30 years of experience across the private, public, and the nonprofit sectors, including as Executive Vice President of the New York State Empire State Development Corporation. Valerie.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Barry, Sharon, who I met in the street. Excited to be here and very honored to have this opportunity to bring some of the experiences that I've had, been blessed with over a relatively long career. The issue of housing has been something that I've worked on for many, many years. And some of you don't know this, but I'm a Housing Authority alum from 91 to 99 when the first Department of Asset Management and Private Market Operations was launched. And that department was looking at alternative means of bringing financing to build additional housing to support the needs of lower income New Yorkers. So it was looking at bonds, it was looking at financing, looking at securitizing future appropriations. And that work led me to the longest part of my career, which was at Standard & Poor's in Wall Street, starting the analytical methodology for housing authorities to build additional units. So that's been very exciting. And then I went on to do similar work, not just nationally, but globally. And what I found in looking at affordable housing across the globe, the issue of social housing, government support, the capacity that's needed for folks who are in cadres or blocks of low income all in one area is very similar across the globe. And so the work that I do now at LISC takes that experience, my government experience, my experience at the state of New York, my experience with the city, and tries to find ways that we are investing in housing and other community infrastructure that is supporting the removal of barriers to systemic equity, to systemic growth in economics, and providing those opportunities for families to have access to housing, home ownership, jobs. So I'm really, really excited to hear from the residents of New York City and to work with the commission to find ways to incorporate those policies and tools into the charter that allow us to invest in equity for all New Yorkers. So I thank you. I do live in Brooklyn, I will say that. I was born in Manhattan, but lived in upstate New York. And when I graduated from college, I moved back to Brooklyn. And in those days, my first apartment, which was on Hancock Street, for $300 a month. That same apartment, I think, is going for $4,500 now. So understanding how that, it was a long time ago, but understanding how that change has happened. The last thing I'll mention, I am fourth generation born in New York City. So the city is very important to me and my family, generationally, and I look forward to participating.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Last and certainly not least, Catherine Wild is President and CEO of the Partnership for New York City, a nonprofit organization whose members are global business leaders and the city's major employers. Prior to taking over the partnership in 2000 as CEO, Catherine led the organization's citywide affordable housing, neighborhood revitalization, and business investment programs. Kathy, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Richard, Sharon, and other commissioners. It's a pleasure to join you. I think all of us who have tried to get things done in New York City have run across, you can't do it, it's in the charter some other way. So when it comes to housing, I think we have a particular opportunity to look at all aspects of the charter in terms of how we can reduce the cost and time associated with production of new housing, preservation of existing housing, and supporting public-private partnerships in a more effective way. That's become an important tool in housing in particular to leverage public investment with private resources. And the charter, much of the charter provisions were established at a time before that was an issue, when the private sector did its thing, the public sector did its thing, and never the twain shall meet. That's changed dramatically, and I think it's great that the mayor has convened a group with the capacity to look seriously at those issues and the opportunities to update them again, to make sure that City of Yes, with all of its promise, it can in fact be effectively implemented.
Thank you so much. It's really, I think everybody can hear from those introductions and those backgrounds, truly an extraordinary group of public servants. It's hard to imagine a group of people better positioned to do this work with a broad range of expertise, from housing to education to child welfare to construction. It's really an amazing group to bring together, and personally very humbled to have the opportunity to be a part of it. There are people in this commission who I've known and worked with literally for decades, and others who I met for the first time today. And I'm really excited to work with all of you. And I want to thank you all for agreeing to take on this really important, time-consuming responsibility. It's an honor to be doing it with you. I know it's time well spent. So thank you all. With the remainder of our time today, we're going to receive two short presentations, first from the Conflict of Interest Board and then from the Law Department. And as I said earlier, integrity and transparency are absolutely critical to the work of the Charter Revision Commission. To this end, we are fortunate to have Alex Kipp of the city's Conflict of Interest Board as our first presenter to speak about our obligations as commissioners.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Okay. I think I have some slides. I'll go ahead and get started here while we boot those up. So first of all, thank you for your service. Charter revision, the charter revision process is what created the Conflict of Interest Board back in '86 to '88. So that gave me a job. It was charter revision in 2010, which mandated training for all public servants, which gave me job security because that makes us quite busy. So thank you for your work. I'm going to speak to you today about a couple aspects of Chapter 68 of the city charter that are specifically targeted to members of boards and commissions such as yourself. It's really about how the law applies to you. So this is going to be a short kind of taste of things you should know about. The takeaway here in general is always ask if you've got any kind of question. This law was created with the intention that all public servants are eventually going to have some kind of question that comes up between their public duties and their private interests where there's a potential for overlap. And when those things come up, they should get advice from the Conflict of Interest Board or from counsel about how to comply with this law to avoid questions of the appearance of impropriety or questions of violation. So it's not a gotcha. These things happen to anybody in public service, and they might happen. These questions might come up here for members of this of the Charter Revision Commission. So our theme today a little bit is part-timers, but high rollers. So you're part-timers, which means that a couple of the restrictions under the Conflict of Interest Law, which was really mostly, it was drafted to think about those full-timers, those 325,000 people who work full-time for New York City government. There's a way in a couple of areas where the law treats you a bit differently because you're part-timers. But because of your substantial policy discretion, there's a couple of ways in which you've got some extra things to think about. And we'll talk about those second. And this should take us about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, sound good? Okay, great. Here we go. Does this thing work? No? Next slide, please. Okay, great. All right, so the first stop on our journey today very quickly is outside employment. Now, you might know already, if you know anything about the Conflict of Interest Law, that the outside employment restriction for full-timers is quite robust. It's very broad. It says that anybody who's got a full-time position in city government, basically, if you have any position with any private entity that has any business dealings with any city agency, you've got a violation on your hands, which can only be cured by a written waiver from the Conflict of Interest Board. That is different for people on the Charter Revision Commission because you're part-timers. Here's that theme coming up. So you don't need a waiver from the Conflict of Interest Board unless you have a position with a private entity that deals directly with the Charter Revision Commission, sells goods and services to the commission, has a contract with the commission, and that's not likely to come up. But if it ever did, you'd go through the waiver process. The waiver process would take you first through the counselor to the mayor's office. You talk to Ed about that, Ed Kiernan over there, and then that would come to us as a waiver request. I think, Ed, you'd be the right, more or less right. Okay, so probably not going to come up, but that's our first stop is outside employment. You only need to think about waivers where your outside employer, which is your primary employer, has business dealings directly with this Charter Revision Commission. Part two of our stop today. Part one, let's just stop here for a second. This is an obvious point. I'm not going to belabor this, but you would probably not be surprised to know that 60% of the enforcement cases every year have to do with misuse of city time or city resources for some kind of outside financial interest. Now, a lot of these cases are what we would call the picayune variety, where someone uses a city truck or a city database or something else to further their outside interests, like their teaching position or their repair position or whatever. But we have had incidences of very high-level people also misusing city time and city resources for their outside practice. There was a member of the Civil Service Commission, this is going back in the Bloomberg years, who used a significant amount of city time and resources in the furtherance of his private law practice, and he was fined $15,000. So I've seen these cases come up. We get about 100 cases a year, about 60% of them probably have misuse of city time and city resources in them. And these are the modalities, whether you're talking about the office technology, the name of the city, or office space, personnel, confidential information. Okay. One asterisk on that, which we'll touch on at the end, is what if my outside firm, if I was a Charter Revision Commission member, I've just given myself a substantial promotion, but let's say I was, what if my primary employer wanted to devote resources in furtherance of my work here on the Charter Revision Commission? That is probably fine. So let's say I'll use Dr. Nieves as an example because we met just recently in November. If the fund for the city of New York, if I worked there, if I wanted to devote a certain amount of the fund for the city of New York's resources, let's say research, copying time, et cetera, in furtherance of this work, that's fine as long as the benefit redounds to this the Charter Revision Commission, and I don't disclose any confidential CRC information to my outside employer. Okay, so we didn't need to do the asterisk, we just did it. Let's move on to the third thing. Okay, the third way in which we think about part-timer, the part-timer sort of rubric, is on making paid communications on behalf of private parties to city agencies. For a full-timer like me, that is prohibited without a waiver for any city agency. So I couldn't represent a company before DOB or the Comptroller's Office or DOI or anybody. For you, again, it's restricted only to this agency. I can't make a compensated communication before the CRC on behalf of a private entity. If I wanted to do that, I would need a waiver. I'm not sure that such a waiver would be supported. You can always ask. There's no penalty for asking, but that would need a written waiver from the Conflict of Interest Board. Thus concludes part one, which has to do with the part-timer section. Let's now go to the high roller section. Members of board, it's not a, no, it's true. It's Diane's over there like high roller. No, it's true. High roller. Okay. So, yeah, now this is, actually we're still on part-timer here for a second. So I did a bad preview here. Let's talk about the gifts rule for a second. The city has a valuable gifts rule. If you've been in city government, you probably remember it. It's taken quite seriously. It says, I don't take a valuable gift from anybody doing business or seeking to do business with the city. Valuable has always meant, since this law's inception in 1989, $50 or more, right? I don't accept a valuable gift from anybody doing business or seeking to do business with the city. Now, I don't know about you. I've worked for the city for 23 years and never been offered $50 worth of anything, but it comes up, right? You can't take it. Now, this doesn't work so well when we think about a part-time member of a board and commission who's got an outside life with an employer and relationships and clients. The good news is that there has been always this what's called a social exception under the gifts rule. And what it essentially says, I'm not going to quote it to you because we'd be here all day, but what it says is if it's obvious that the reason why you're getting the gift is a pre-existing relationship with and that's the sole reason you're getting the gift. Like it's your employer's holiday party, or it's your relative, it's your longstanding friend. And it's obvious that the only reason they're giving you the gift is that pre-existing relationship, then you don't worry about the $50 rule. The question I think to ask for advice on is if you've got an old friend who now wants to shower you with gifts, but they also have a matter before this commission, now we have kind of muddled appearances about why the giving may happen. So the greater the propinquity of the person's city matters to your Charter Revision Commission position, when that person's trying to give you a gift, you might want to ask for advice to make sure. And I think the takeaway beyond that is like, look, we don't take gifts for doing our city jobs or from people that have matters before us, and that's pretty obvious, right? So we don't, hey, you remember the Charter Revision Commission, have this thing. Obviously wouldn't take it in that case. So those two things. Your outside life is not impacted by this. Your relatives are going to continue to give you gifts. You're going to continue to be a member of your firm or whatever you are. But if someone wants to give you a gift because of your status here, it probably should be refused. Okay, now we do the high rollers thing, I think. Next slide, please. Does this work? Okay. Is that the next thing? Oh, okay. Leaving city service. Okay, this is largely moot. I'm going to do this super fast, but you might remember that in the charter revision process a couple of years ago, remember when we had these back-to-back charter revision commissions during the de Blasio years? There was one mayoral and there was the council one that followed through the next year. The council kind of motivated with a non-mayoral one. There was a slight change to the charter, which technically affects people in this room, but it's probably going to be a moot point. And what happened was the 1-year post-employment ban for members of boards and commissions and other high-level people, heads of agencies, people like that, went to 2 years. So for 2 years upon leaving service at the Charter Revision Commission, I would not be able to make a paid compensation back to the Charter Revision Commission. And you know why this is moot? Because once your work is done, there's not going to be any more Charter Revision Commission. So while there would be a 2-year ban, there's not anybody to make representations to after you leave. So let's move on because that doesn't really apply. And now let's go to political activities. Okay. So these are the standard ones that we think about. We don't solicit people that we've got juice over. We don't even ask our subordinates to do anything in terms of a political activity. Let's get to the high roller section. The high roller section is this. Those of us who have substantial policy discretion, we face a restriction on asking other people for money for local races. What does that mean? So anybody running for council, for mayor, for comptroller, for public advocate, for borough president, we cannot ask anyone in the world to contribute to those races. We can write our own checks within whatever the campaign finance limits are for the races, whatever, but we can't have a house party if that house party is to ask other people to donate to those campaigns. You can't do it. I might have a friend who's living in Australia. I haven't seen him in 10 years. I cannot call him and ask him to fund a race for one of those city offices. And the other kind of race that we cannot ask other people to fund is any current city elected official who's running for any other office. And this increasingly happens because we've got term limits. So back before there were term limits, this happened in my neighborhood, Brooklyn, best borough, right? So down where I live, Major Owens was my congressional representative for a long time. He retired, and during that, after his retirement, Yvette Clark was a sitting city council member, and she ran for his seat. We would not have been able to ask anyone in the world to contribute money to her race because she was a sitting city elected official who was running for another office. So that's what that means. And the other thing is political activities in terms of executive or office positions in the county parties. So what it says basically is you got substantial policy discretion. You can't have a high level position in the political parties. And you might scratch your head like, wow, that sounds like hypers. Why? Why is that? Well, a lot of times ethics laws are kind of responding to the context out of which they come. And this is probably one of those times. You might remember there was a huge scandal involving Queensborough President Donald Maness in the mid-'80s. And this is kind of a small part of that. But one of the things in charter revision that they noticed was, oh, Donald Maness was Queensborough president, but he was also head of the Queens Democratic Party at the same time. And maybe that's not a great fit. Maybe people with substantial policy discretion shouldn't also be very high up in the political parties. And so there's now a restriction that says we can't hold those high level positions in the parties. It's been the same for a long time. I think it was challenged maybe by Howard Golden, I don't know when, before I worked in city government. He got a couple votes in the Court of Appeals, I think. But in any case, it's been the same long time. Okay, now, last thing we need to touch on is the very core notion of the conflict of interest law, which has to do with misuse of position. I'm not supposed to use my city position in a way that would benefit any private entity that I am associated with, right? My outside employer, like the Fund for the City of New York, et cetera. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean in terms of your board service? Well, it is possible that the entities that you work for full-time might want to make a statement at an open meeting in support of something that the Charter Revision Commission is considering. And so the first question that comes up is, when my employer comes to make that statement at the open meeting, what's my duty? Do I have to walk out of the room? Do I have to recuse from something? Can I participate in that? And the answer is no. I can participate in that open meeting like anybody else. The board's guidance on this is you just make it clear, I am talking right now as a Charter Revision Commission member and not as representative of my outside employer. That's it. That's it. No recusal needed. You don't have to worry about it. Now, what if, again, I'll go back to the fund for the city of New York. Thank you for volunteering. What if the fund for the city of New York would like to have some meetings with the staff before or after the open meeting? Can I, as a person who works for the Fund for the City of New York, can I participate in those meetings where the Fund for the City of New York is going to meet with the staff? This is not subject to open meetings law. This is something else that's coming up before or after the open meeting. And the answer is no. If I'm on the Charter Revision Commission, I'm employed by the Fund for the City of New York. I do not participate in those meetings that are not subject to the open meetings law. Someone else can participate in those, but not me. And then the last thing I think we are now, that one last thing to think about is, what if my outside employer is a for-profit entity and not a not-for-profit entity? And there, the advice, the guidance is a little different. Not only do I not participate in the non-open meetings, just like we would if I was at a not-for-profit, but even when let's say my for-profit company that I work for, they want to make a statement at the open meeting, I would have to recuse from that part of the open meeting. I'm not sure that that's going to come up at all, but if it did, that's what you would do. Now, last thing on the slideshow. Okay, this is just the beginning. What happens with conflict of interest law is you forget all this stuff we talked about, which is good because you got to consider much more important things like, how am I going to continue to live in this city? Thank you for your work on that. But when you get the question, think of us as the place that can answer them all. So we're very easy to get a hold of. You call us up at that number, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You could also write us a letter if you're nostalgic for the postal system, right? But the easiest way is to go online. We've got it's kind of blocked there by the captioning, but anyway, we've got a website like everybody else on nyc.gov. And on the homepage, it says, get legal advice. Type in your question. We'll get back to you that day. That concludes. Oh, by the way, I gave you like a one-page handout there. It's being folded up, which I think is the right move. Maybe you could use it as a fan if you want, but there is our telephone number and our website on the back in case you need it. I don't think I have to say anything else. Is there anything else you want me to talk about? No. Okay, good. Well, thank you. And thank you for your, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
I didn't understand, can we make political contributions, but we can't ask people to make contributions?
Correct. So I can make any contributions to any candidate running. I can also ask people to make contributions to state races, federal races, but I can't ask anybody to make a contribution to anybody running for a local race or any current city elected official who's running for any other race. So like a current city council member running for Congress or Senate would be the kind of classic examples where that comes
And for what period?
For the duration of my service here on the Charter Revision Commission. So there's no let's say your service ends on Friday, the Saturday, you can ask anybody in the world to make those contributions. There's no cooling off period for that. You could do that the next day. But for the duration of your service, you couldn't make that.
And what about contributions to a city PAC?
Contributions to the city PAC is going to be the same answer. If the city PAC is devoted to electing someone, then I don't ask people to donate to that PAC to get that either a person running for city office elected or to get that current city official elected for any other office.
And if it's a general PAC for any state or local official?
Yeah, there's lots of different kinds of PACs. If you've got a question where you feel like I'm a little concerned because like the PAC does a lot of different things, I want to know if I can do an ask. That's a great question on legal advice. Let's sort it out because I can talk about the extremes where it's like, well, the PAC is just issue oriented, right? And it's not getting any local official elected, and that would seem to be okay. But there might be a PAC whose sole purpose is to get a particular individual elected. And then we got to ask about, well, who are they trying to get elected? Because if it's one of these prohibited things, then the answer would be no, you can't ask other people to donate. So if you've got that question to come up, let's get you specific guidance in writing from the COIB. So when the asks come and you know you can do it, if anybody scratches their head, you could say, no, I already got advice from COIB. They said it was fine. Right? by the way, all advice questions, this is the way this works. It's free and it's confidential. So that means you call us up. We can't share even the fact that you called us for advice with anybody. You can share that advice with anybody you like, but we cannot. And that makes it a safe place for you to ask whatever question you want. Know that the Conflict of Interest Board can't trumpet that to anybody else, okay? All right, thanks, everybody, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. You actually, I can't believe you made the COIB presentation interesting and compelling. That was fantastic. So I appreciate it. We are now fortunate to have Brenda Cook and Benjamin Miller of the New York City Law Department to present on the function and role of the city charter, as well as the work of some prior charter revision commissions. Thank you, Brenda and Benjamin. The bar is high. The bar is very high.
That conflicts of interest would be so energetic and interesting. But thank you. Should I have a handle on this? Yes. Thank you, Chair and members of the commission, for having us. It's a privilege for myself and my colleague Ben Miller to be here today. I'm a Deputy Chief Counsel in the Legal Counsel Division at the New York City Law Department, and myself, Ben, and a team from our division are at your service throughout your tenure and your time here on the commission to help assist and guide and answer any questions that you may have now or in the future. I am impressed by the qualifications and the dedication that I heard from each of you as you were introduced, and I look forward to working with each of you. The content of our presentation today is going to focus in two parts. I'll cover the first, which is the bit of the history of the charter and a sense of how it's organized, because part of your duties as commissioners is to understand the entirety of the charter so that you can carry out your service in that respect. Ben will speak after me, and he will address methods of amending and how charter review commissions in the past and how you may, as you carry your work forward, approach amendments proposed to the charter. The charter is a document setting out the structure and powers of responsibilities of city government. It's referred to as a short form document that sets out general authority, responsibilities of agencies and elected officials, the kind of general basic processes of our government. For the most part, it doesn't contain terribly detailed information. The sort of day-to-day workings of government, you won't really find there. The requirements that are imposed on individuals or businesses and citizens of the city as we carry about in our daily lives. Those kind of details are usually in other places, such as the administrative code, or the rules that are promulgated by agencies that really do touch more of the day-to-day lives of New Yorkers. There are exceptions. Chapter 79 of the charter is a recent addition to the charter, and it relates to the Office of Community Hiring. And it contains some specific provisions about that office. But for the most part, my description of the charter would be that it is more general, and a more general document it is intended to be. To give the context legally for where the charter fits in, generally in the United States, local governments derive their legal authority from the states in which they are located. That means that in New York State, the legal framework for municipalities is set by our state constitution and our state laws. There are a few primary state laws that define our local authority here in New York City. It's our municipal home rule law, the general city law, and the general municipal law. The municipal home rule law in particular is the one you'll be hearing about from Ben later in this presentation, that gives municipalities broad authority to determine their own structure of city government and sets forth our processes for how we would do so. Now we'll talk a little about the history of the charter. The concept of charters in the United States is quite old and dates back to colonial times, but I won't go deep into that. So thank for that. The first charter in New York City is, we now think of it, however, was adopted a long time ago in 1897. That was following the creation of Greater New York, which was formed by combining the cities of Brooklyn and New York and some other municipalities that are now generally the city as we understand it. That charter was very long, had a tremendous amount of detail, and much more than our current charter. Amendments were made to that charter along the way by state law, in the early 1900s, and it got a little longer and more detailed until what we have today. The charter today is what we refer to as a short form charter. And that means that the charter that we have that was implemented in 1936 by a charter revision commission, much like yourselves, created a charter that was more focused, reflecting the kind of broad structure, and the more detailed provisions were moved into the administrative code. And administrative code was adopted shortly after that 1936 charter. There have been a number of charter revision commissions over the years, ranging from ones in 1961 through several in the 1980s and the early 2000s, and most recently, just last year, as was mentioned, and Diane was the executive director of, where Mayor Adams appointed a commission where proposals were approved by the voters in November 2024. Something to note, while most recent commissions, including this one, were created by the mayor under Municipal Home Rule Law 36 Subdivision 4, the 2019 Charter Review Commission was actually created pursuant to council local law. Some of you also may be aware that City Council passed another local law in 2024. It's Local Law 121. And the council has, in fact, also instituted a Charter Revision Commission under that local law. And that commission will work separately and distinctly from the work of this commission. And that is of note, and I wanted to address that here. Our charter, before we get into the next section of the chapters, take a little step back and describe this hybrid document, which you'll hear more about from Ben. But it includes, as I mentioned, a compilation of a patchwork of state laws, laws passed by City Council, and the results of petitions and proposals by charter revision commissions like yourself. All of those things come to form this document that, much like the Constitution of the United States, is a broad document based on a democratic process that's balancing tension and ideas, as many commissions have gone before you have done. The things that the charter holds together in tension and balance are things like community, autonomy, and centralized government. So we might think about this as the continued existence of borough presidents and community boards. Well, we in New York City have a centralized government led by the mayor, an elected official, and city council elected officials. Those borough presidents and community boards, borough presidents are directly elected and appoint community boards that have important responsibilities for aggregating perspectives and viewpoints of the constituents in those boroughs. But their power comes through mostly modes of persuasion rather than more direct power like the mayor or the council will have. The charter also attempts to strike a balance between the executive, represented by the office of the mayor, and the legislative branch, as well as other elected officials like the public advocate or the comptroller. So for instance, the comptroller has the role to audit the financial affairs of the city, but it's the mayor who sets out the city's budget and city council who adopts the budget. The charter attempts to strike that balance to make sure there is oversight and democratic representation in the process, and an executive in charge of carrying out the functions of city government. And thirdly, I would want to call your attention to the balance between government efficiency on the one hand and accountability and public participation on the other. The charter compels the production of a lot of reports, and people may have varying views on whether anyone reads those reports, but it brings information into the public view. It brings information to the public so they can make informed choices about how government works, and it provides places for the public to attend city meetings, deliberative bodies, and city bodies who are making decisions about how to allocate resources. That's all what the charter essentially does. It protects public participation in the process while recognizing, as has been mentioned today, we have 8 million people, more than 8 million people in the city, and it's hard to imagine that we could get much done by direct participation in everything. So looking now at the sections of the charter and the chapters and how it's organized, the beginning chapters are mostly organized in elected officials. Chapter 1 generally covers the power of the mayor. Chapter 2, city council. Chapter 4, borough presidents. Chapter 5, the comptroller. These chapters, each of them generally explain how the official is elected what term they serve in office, what their powers and duties are, how they can be removed, how they could be succeeded if they are not able to serve, what kind of staff or deputies they can hire to appoint them and help them fulfill their office responsibilities. And I'll mention this because someone is eagle-eyed and might wonder why I skipped chapter 3. I skipped chapter 3 because chapter 3 has been repealed. Chapter 3 it used to address the Board of Estimate, which in 1989, as part of the elected process, was removed from its charter section. There are many chapters in the budget. There are many chapters that set forth the basic processes of city government in the charter as well. Those are budgeting, spending, administration of city property. There's a chapter about the expense budget. There's a chapter about tax appeals and city planning and capital projects, the budget process, the independent budget office, financial obligations of the city, procurement, and that covers contracting and purchasing by the city, franchises and city property generally. There are chapters on almost everything you can imagine in the charter. And as I told you, the charter is considered to be a short form document compared to documents of our charter previously. And there's the remainder of the charter, which we haven't yet addressed. And there's more than 40 chapters that each cover a different agency. Similar to those chapters, they cover similar to the chapters that cover elected officials. Those chapters cover topics of appointments to the agency's authority to promulgate rules, and in many cases, the power of those agencies to issue subpoenas and enforce the laws within the scope of their authority. You're in luck though, because I'm not going to go through 40 chapters in any further detail. There are some chapters I do want to highlight more specifically, cover processes and requirements applicable to city officials and agencies, but we'll touch briefly upon them. Chapter 45 is the City Administrative Procedure Act, sometimes referred to as CAPA, which is the rulemaking procedures for city agencies enacting those rules. Chapter 46 is elections and voter assistance. Chapter 47, public access to meetings. I'll pause here to say that this one is a chapter that I will speak a little bit about because that addresses public access under the state's open meetings law. And you will hear reference to that throughout your work. We've heard it here already today because this is a public body that is governed by open meetings law. Chapter 50 and 50A are term limits and qualifications. Chapter 54 covers collective bargaining. Chapter 68 is the conflict of interest section, which was just covered in very energetic detail by my colleague. Chapter 69 was added, covers community districts and coterminality of local services. Section 27 within that chapter is the coterminality of service districts, which of note was added in after Charter Revision Commissions in 1975 and was intended to address what had previously been a very disparate patchwork of not at all overlapping or intersecting service districts for various city agencies such as police, parks, fire. And so the 1975 Charter Revision Commission attempted to reconcile to the greatest extent possible overlay so that those service districts, for regardless of which agency, were more aligned with each other geographically. And now I will turn the presentation over to my colleague Ben Miller, who will give you a little bit more information about how you're going to do your work to amend and propose amendments to the charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Again, my name is Ben Miller. I'm a senior counsel in the Legal Counsel Division of the Law Department, and it is a pleasure to present to the Commission today. When it comes to amending the charter, it is important to point out one crucial difference between our charter and the federal and state constitution. Those documents, as you probably are aware, are rarely amended because it's hard to do so. But the charter is actually a document that can be amended relatively frequently. The charter can be amended by a normal local law passed by city council, signed or not vetoed by the mayor, or it can be changed by a local law subject to a referendum. Now, whether a local law is subject to a referendum depends on the subject matter of the change being made. So just some examples of things that, if done by local law, would require a referendum are significant changes to the powers of an elective office or the abolishment of an elective office, transferring powers between mayoral agencies or an agency that, a non-mayoral agency where it's headed by a commission that's not fully controlled by the mayor, like TLC. Or another example is changes to the way that the city disposes of property. And there are some others. Other ways that the charter can be amended are by state law, by petition, subject to a referendum, or by a charter revision commission, which also would be any recommendations from a charter revision commission are, of course, subject to approval by the voters. As Brenda mentioned, the establishment of a commission is pursuant to the Municipal Home Rule Law, Section 36. Subdivision 4 of that section gives the mayor the authority to establish commissions, and this is the most typical way that commissions are established, but there are other methods, including by a local law. A commission established by the mayor can consist of between 9 and 15 members. The mayor selects the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary of the commission. All members of the commission must be residents of the city, and commission members may hold other public office or employment. Commissions are not permanent. They typically expire on the day of the election at which their recommendations are voted on. If a commission determines not to make any recommendations, then they expire on the day of the second general election after their appointment. The powers of a commission. A commission may hire employees and consultants, and a commission may conduct hearings, take testimony, and subpoena witnesses or documents. A commission may propose amendments to the charter that could be adopted through regular local law, or those things that would require a referendum. So earlier I mentioned that the council can amend the charter by local law, and whether a referendum is required depends on the nature of the change being made. Charter Revision Commission can make any change to the charter, including changes that council could do by local law, but any change recommended by the commission must be approved by the voters. A commission may propose a broad set of amendments that essentially overhauls the whole charter and implements a new charter, or focuses only on certain areas. The last time we had a full overhaul was in 1989, as Brenda mentioned, I believe. And then the commission may present amendments to voters as one question, a series of questions, or as alternative options. The series of questions is the typical way. There are limits on the power of a commission. A commission may not propose amendments beyond the scope of the city's local legislative powers as set forth in the state constitution and the municipal home rule law. This generally means that a commission may not propose changes to the charter that would be inconsistent with state law. And a commission may also not intrude in areas that are exclusively authority of the federal government or the state government. A commission must review the entire charter and hold public hearings. Now, if the commission decides to leave a part of the charter unchanged, which is typical, then the commission must issue a report accompanying their proposals explaining why it determined to leave such a part unchanged. But this is a flexible requirement and it can be accomplished in different ways. The 2018 commission, I think, directly addressed the requirement and sort of explained some topics it was leaving to future commissions to consider, whereas other commissions really just explain why they focused on particular topics, and thus by implication, that sort of explains why they decided to leave other parts alone. So to wrap us up, I'll just briefly discuss some notable recent commissions. The 1989 commission, again, the main change there was that it eliminated the Board of Elections. This was a key government body that was declared unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court. That board it violated the principle of one person, one vote because each borough president had equal voting power despite the very different populations of the boroughs. So because this Board of Estimate prior to 1989 had such a significant role in so many important city processes, all those had to be rethought when the board was abolished. The 2010 commission restored the two-term limit for elected officials that had been extended only 2 years before in 2008. And the 2019 commission implemented ranked choice voting and also made the mayor's appointment of the Corp Council subject to the city council's advice and consent. In 2021, there was the Racial Justice Commission appointed by Mayor de Blasio, examining racial equity, and that commission resulted in the establishment of the Office of Racial Equity and the requirement for the preparation of citywide and agency-specific racial equity plans. And finally, in 2024, the Charter Revision Commission appointed by Mayor Adams focused on government efficiency and responsiveness. And that commission resulted in recommendations approved in November, including the expansion of the Department of Sanitation's authority, the requirements for city council to obtain cost estimates before certain new legislation and to provide notice before voting on policing or public safety legislation, and also established additional requirements for the capital planning processes. So that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions the commission has today or throughout the process. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the law department now? Oh, thank you so much for the presentation. We appreciate it. So this includes the formal part of our agenda for this meeting. As we said before, our first hearing will be on February 11th in Brooklyn at 5 p.m. at the fire department headquarters. So we hope to see many of you there. And if there's no other issues or topics or questions, I'd love to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions?
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.